Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to take you through the 6 ways that you can self-distribute your feature film. And make sure you stick around until the end because I'm going to give you some tips and pros and cons on self-distributing your film versus teaming up with a more traditional distributor. Alright, so let's jump in. Number 1 on the list is to run the film through the festival circuit. So you want to give your film a good 12 months from the first festival you play to the end to really just maximize your circuit and to also generate revenue. So if you haven't generated revenue from festivals before, that's okay, it's totally normal. I didn't do that until I realized that actually you can get paid for playing your film at a festival. So this only applies to feature films, but if your film is playing at a film festival, there are screening fees that you can charge for them playing your film. And the fees typically range from around 200 to 250 to about 350 USD. So if you play a number of screenings, a number of festivals over that 12-month period, you can start to stack up a bit of revenue from that. Now, this is something that isn't publicized. A film festival isn't going to tell you about this. Unfortunately, if you don't know about it, they will just play your film and they won't mention the screening fee. It's only if you actually say to them when they reach out or when you get selected, you need to ask like, what is your screening fee? And then they'll tell you. And so it's like this unspoken thing, which kind of sucks, to be honest, because I definitely remember on my first or second film, we played it at a bunch of festivals, had no idea about screening fees, and it wasn't until I actually worked in distribution that I realized you could make money from film festivals. So that's the first thing that you want to do. Then once you're through the festival circuit and you're looking at how to release the film, I think you really want to do it in this order. So number 1 is to book or hire cinemas. So there's 2 ways you can do this. You can either go out and try and book your film into cinemas like it would be a general release or a limited release. So that involves you basically reaching out to all the different exhibitors and trying to book in a date that film would get released. So it always gets released on the same date, and you basically line them all up and you agree again on a fee with them depending on what country you're in. That can differ. In the US, it's more like a 50-50 split with exhibitors. In Australia, it's more like a 40-60 split in the exhibitor's favor. So it changes from country to country. Now, the difficult thing with this is that if your film hasn't had real success on the festival circuit, and obviously you not being a distributor and going to these people probably for the first time, you may not be able to get much traction with them. I mean, you might at the same time, but if you're not able to get any real traction that way to set it up as like a limited release, the other way that you can do it is to simply book or hire individual cinemas. So you book screenings and you can just then sell tickets from that screening. So this is typically called 4-walling. So you're essentially paying for those 4 walls and then you have to fill it and make the money from it. So that's obviously harder to do because you don't have the benefit of the film being, playing like over a number of days. You only have like this one session. You don't have any marketing support from the exhibitor. So it's a bit harder to do. There's obviously an upfront cost as well. Whereas if it is a limited release, and you're booking it with cinemas, that you don't pay up front, you just have that split. So this way you're just paying for it. There's no additional split and you are responsible for filling that cinema. Now, that can work really well for things like premieres, Q&As. So even if you're doing a limited release, I would recommend that you still do like a premiere for the film, just as a way to build buzz for the film and to sell a lot of tickets. Because obviously you're going to, particularly in like your home city, you're going to be able to get a lot of people to that premiere. And one mistake that I made on my very first film was that we decided to book a cinema in Melbourne. It's a great cinema. It's called the Astor. It seats like 800 people. So it's a massive cinema. And we packed it out but it was free. No one had to pay. Now, I'm sure if we had to pay, we wouldn't have got 800 people there, but we probably would have got close because we were able to just bring all the people that we knew. And so even if we got 500 people and we were charging $20, well, that's 10K right there. So you can make a lot of, a decent amount of money from these one-off screenings, but obviously you need to be able to get people there. The other way that you can run cinemas at this point is to use a cinema on demand platform. So there are a couple out there. There's one called FanForce. There used to be one called Tug, I think. I'm not sure if it's still around, but you can also team up with them. And the way that works is that they will take on your film, and then they will be able to book these one-off screenings on your behalf. And then again, you will sell tickets to those screenings. The benefit of using a platform like this is it is on a platform. It's all like housed in one place. So you can just send traffic to that page and that's where they buy tickets. Whereas obviously if you're doing all these one-off events yourself, then you're having to also find a way to like drive that traffic to one specific place, which would usually be the exhibitor's website. So it just makes it a little bit more seamless for you, a little bit more seamless for the consumer or the audience. And then the good thing with those platforms is a screening only goes ahead if you sell a certain number of tickets. So if you don't hit that threshold, then the screening doesn't go ahead. So that's how you can do cinema. Next thing that you want to do is release it on VOD. And the way that you would do this if you're self-distributing is to go through an aggregator. So an aggregator is basically a company that will take the digital files to your film and put it up or try to put it up on as many VOD platforms as possible. Now, some distributors also have aggregation services. So you could also reach out to your local distributors to see if they offer that. Not all of them do. Some of them have done in the past and no longer do. But what you really want to find there is someone that can take the film and just put it onto as many of these VOD platforms. And then you want to schedule in that date. So work out what that date is with the aggregator that it's going to go live on VOD. And then of course, start promoting it. So next thing that you want to do is this is kind of like, we can split the next two. So you want to try and sell the film directly to a streaming platform. Now, if you have already gone through an aggregator, then they might be able to sell the streaming rights. So streaming rights are referred to as SVOD, so streaming video on demand. So through the aggregator in the last step, you could either carve out the SVOD rights, so you could keep those rights for yourself and only give them the other rights, which would be advertising, so AVOD, or transactional, TVOD. And you could keep those SVOD rights, and then you could try and go and sell those to like a Netflix. Now, if you can do that yourself, then that's great because you're going to keep all of that revenue. So no one's getting a commission. So that would be the fourth way that you do it. But if you don't have a relationship with streaming platforms, that can be a bit difficult. So the fifth way that I would recommend self-distributing is to use a consultant. So go out there and find a consultant that can sell the SVOD rights, the TV rights, the airline rights, the hotel rights, and the educational rights. Because those are rights that are very, I would say they're probably even more relationship based than the other rights. And so if you can just team up with a consultant, obviously they're going to take a commission, right? It's probably going to be like 10 to 20%. But if they can go out and then just sell each of those rights for you, that's going to, I think, give you the best chance of exploiting those rights. Because without those relationships, it's very hard, to just go to the airlines, to go to hotels, to go to educators, to go to all the TV networks, to go to all the SVOD platforms. It's a lot of work, but if you don't have the contacts, you might not get the best result. So teaming up with a consultant for that is really a great way to do it. And that's something that we still do on our films if we're distributing the projects. And then the sixth and final way is to sell the international rights to your film. So again, there are two ways that you can do this. You can absolutely go out and sell the film to distributors in individual territories yourself. I've done this in the past. The benefit is obviously that, again, you keep all the money, right? You're not sharing that with a sales agent or a consultant who might be taking a commission. The downside is, again, you don't have relationships with all these distributors in all these different countries. And so you're not going to get the same level of penetration into those markets or into those territories that someone would who does that basically day to day as their job. And so even though I've done this in the past myself, I recommend, and since that experience, I always work with a sales agent to sell the film. But if you're sticking totally to self-distribution, then of course you can do it yourself or even get a consultant who might charge less than a sales agent, and they can sell it to different territories on your behalf. And selling the film internationally is a really great way to generate revenue because you're getting paid in advances up front, right? So those distributors are paying advances for your film, and that's money that can come, straight to you. You're not waiting for the film to get released. And so it's a really good way to generate revenue for the project. So those are the 6 ways that you can do it. Now, I'll just run you through them again. So it's run it through the festival circuit, book or hire cinemas, release it on VOD through an aggregator, sell directly to streaming platforms if you can. If not, use a consultant and then get them to sell SVOD, TV, airlines, hotels, and education. And then finally, sell it internationally. So either sell it yourself or get a sales agent or a consultant to sell the film for you. So that's how you can do it. That's how you can self-distribute your film from A to Z. Now, what are the pros and cons of doing this? So there's a few things. I mean, I've touched on these through the video. Obviously, let's start with the cons. So obviously you don't have experience doing this, which means everything is going to take longer and you're likely going to make more mistakes. So that's something that you really have to factor in. The other big downside, and I think this one's probably more overlooked, I certainly overlooked it when I started, is that just the amount of time it takes to self-distribute the film. So if you've finished making the film, so you've gone from development to delivery of the film, that is a 9 to 12 month process. So you've just spent a big chunk of your life doing that. If you're then going to go and self-distribute your film, you're probably going to have to spend another 3 to 4 months dedicating your time to that. Now, the downside of that is kind of twofold. Number one, the film may not, and I'm going to say may not because you never know, but it may not generate the type of revenue that's even going to cover the time that you spend distributing. Because if you're self-distributing your film, we can assume that it's probably because bigger distributors haven't come on board, or maybe they've given you offers, but they haven't been, that attractive. And so you've decided to do it yourself. But what you kind of forget is that you're essentially just spending more of your time that's not going to be recouped. And you're also spending your time on something that you may not actually want to be doing long term. So this is when it really clicked for me. So if you don't want to be in the business of distributing, if you don't want to self-distribute your films forever, then that time that you spend distributing that film is essentially lost time, right? It's time that you could be spending getting better or mastering a craft that is going to be more beneficial for you long term. So it could be spent on developing your next script. If you've got your next script, it could be spent financing the film. So basically, it's about that choice between, do you want to be producing films or distributing films? And if you want to be producing films, probably the best thing that you can do is move on to the next film and start producing that project. Also, if you're relying on income, like on income from films to survive, then the best way for you to make money is to get your next film financed and into production so that you can generate fees from that project. And so again, if you're spending 3 or 4 months self-distributing your film, then you're taking time away from, you're basically increasing the time that it's going to take for you to generate those fees. So those are some of the downsides. So it's worth considering those, especially if you haven't done before and you're considering self-distributing your films. I know from experience, it's something that I did on my first couple of films. I even set up a distribution company, and it took me some time to realize that actually that's not the core focus. The core focus is and should be producing films. So let's talk about some of the pros, right? So some of the pros are that obviously you're going to keep more of the revenue because you're not having to share that with a distributor. And so that revenue, if you're able to generate significant revenue, then you're going to be able to save a decent amount on their commissions, because a distributor is typically going to take 50% of the revenue that's generated from the distribution of the film. So that's one of the big upsides. Another upside could be that you have more control over that process. You have more control over the distribution. And so really, I think those are the two things. You get more control over it and you get more of the pie. But again, what you've got to weigh up is it better to have 100% of a smaller pie or 50% of a much larger pie? So those are the things that I think are worth considering. Now, if you have any other questions about self-distribution, or you're wondering if you should do it and it's right for your film, feel free to drop those questions in the comment section below. And if you like the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you on the next one.